Mr. Speaker, I rise on a matter of privilege. As is the tradition in this House, a matter of privilege must be raised at the first possible occasion, and it must state the reason that there's a prima facie case for a breach of privilege. And in accordance with our rules, I will follow this matter of privilege with a motion. The matter of privilege I raise arises out of the debate in the House yesterday, and as I needed to check Hansard and to confirm certain facts, today is the earliest possible time I could raise this matter of privilege. My specific concern is that my ability to represent people in Manitoba who have concerns about the operation of the healthcare system, and particularly our emergency rooms, is being impaired. Mr. Speaker, I believe in being courteous and in speaking in an appropriate manner in this House. But yesterday a reference was made to my use of the word, which I will spell out because of concern that it might be ruled unparliamentary. It is spelled S-M-U-G. S-M-U-G is a word which in meaning is very similar to the word arrogant. To start with, I could reference the fact that the word arrogant or arrogance has been used on 142 different occasions in this legislature in this session alone. It has never been ruled unparliamentary, even when it was used, for example, on Wednesday, December 5th, 2012, at the beginning of this session by the Premier in specific reference to the arrogance of the Leader of the Opposition. So I make the case that the word S-M-U-G, which means very close to the same as arrogance, should not be considered unparliamentary and should be usable in this legislature. To back up this claim, I will cite the debates of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario on May the 8th, 2013, when Mr. Tim Hudak said, and I quote, "It is disappointing to see the same SMUG disregard for taxpayers from the Finance Minister." And on that occasion, the Honourable Charles Sousa replied, and I quote, "The only one being SMUG is the Leader of the Opposition." In neither case was there ever a question of this word being unparliamentary. I refer the House also to the words of the MP for Churchill, Nikki Ashton, on Friday, May 24th, 2013, when she said, and I quote, "Mr. Speaker, yesterday, as he was surrounded by reporters, Senator Duffy was asked whether he was planning to resign. His SMUG reply was simply, 'I am a senator.' There was never any suggestion on this occasion that the word SMUG was unparliamentary. I think it is important that the House be respectful. I also believe it is important that members of the legislature are not so censored from using regular English language words like SMUG. And I would therefore specifically ask for the Speaker to consider whether the word SMUG is or is not parliamentary or unparliamentary. I would also like to put my concerns about using the word SMUG in context. We have had a Minister of the Crown who has said repeatedly in this chamber that the member for St. Paul has, and I quote, "attacked First Nations day in and day out," end of quote. The implications of this phrase is that the member for St. Paul, for some reason, hates First Nations. First, I would say that the member from St. Paul, from what I've heard, is raising legitimate questions and is doing his best to ensure the First Nation in question receives the infrastructure it's been promised. But my point here, Mr. Speaker, is that we should have a balance in how we approach what is said in this legislature, that we need to be able to address issues, that we need to be able to talk about the government or one of its members as being happy, sad, cheerful, arrogant, or SMUG. But at the same time, we should be careful not to reference or imply hate for a group of people, because that would be wrong. And Mr. Speaker, on a final note, I would remind the Speaker that my use of the word SMUG arose out of the Minister of Health's comment, and I quote, "That was cheerful," which talked about me, or possibly my question, as being cheerful. I didn't challenge the Minister and suggest her remark was somehow unparliamentary because it described an emotional characteristic about me or about my question. Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the member for St. Paul, that this matter be referred to a committee of this House.
Following the daily prayer on Wednesday, September the 11th, 2013, the honourable member for River Heights rose on a matter of privilege, taking issue with the presiding officer ruling a word used by the honourable member on the previous day as unparliamentary. At the conclusion of his remarks, the honourable member for River Heights moved, in quotations, that this matter be referred to a committee of this House, end of quotations. The honourable government House Leader also offered advice to the chair. I took the matter under advisement in order to consult with the procedural authorities. I thank both honourable members for their advice to the chair. There are two conditions that must be satisfied in order for the matter raised to be ruled in order as a prima facie case of privilege. First, was the issue raised at the earliest opportunity? And second, has it been demonstrated that the members' privileges have been breached in order to warrant putting the matter to the House? In this ruling, I'm going to address the issue of whether privileges have been breached before I address the issue of timeliness. The member indicated in raising this matter of privilege that the Speaker had ruled language used by the member on the previous day as unparliamentary. However, in looking at page 4,915 of Hansard for September the 10th, it is very clear that as Speaker, in fact, I did not rule language unparliamentary and only offered a caution. I will remind the House that I said, and I quote, in quotations, I must say that the word that was chosen by the honourable member for River Heights causes me some concern. Perhaps it is not an unparliamentary word, but I think we've all agreed that we're making significant progress here with respect to language, and the word that was chosen by the honourable member for River Heights was very close to the line, end of quotations. I then went on to offer a caution to all members when rising on a question or in response to it, or as a part of speeches in the House, to pick or choose words carefully. So it is clear that the word was not ruled unparliamentary. Also, I'd like to inform the House that Beauchene citation 485(1) advises that unparliamentary words may be brought to the attention of the House either by the Speaker or by a member. When the question is raised about unparliamentary language by a member, it must be done as a point of order and not as a question of privilege. In addition, I would note for the House that O'Brien and Bosk advise on page 100 of the second edition of the House of Commons Procedure and Practice that a limitation on freedom of speech for members is provided by the authority of the Speaker under the standing orders to preserve order and decorum. This finding is supported by a ruling by a 1996 ruling by Speaker Decay, which states in part, in quotations, freedom of speech is the protection of members to say what they wished in the House without interference from outside bodies or agencies or fear of repercussions from outside agencies, but it does not guarantee members the right to say absolutely anything they want in the House. The Speaker of the House, through the Speaker, can impose limits or rules. A Speaker should not be absolutely interventionist, but in those rare cases where language impinges on the dignity or decorum or sensibilities of the House, the Speaker does have the authority to request the withdrawal of unparliamentary language. End of quotation. I would also like to reference for the House that page 619 of O'Brien and Bosk advises that when dealing with language, the Speaker takes into account the tone, manner, and intention of the member speaking, the person to whom the words at issue were directed, the degree of provocation, and most importantly, whether or not the remarks created disorder in the chamber. Thus, language deemed unparliamentary one day may not necessarily be deemed unparliamentary the next day. So taking these references and sources into account, it is clear that there is not a prima facie case of privilege in this situation. To address the issue of timeliness, the honourable member for River Heights indicated that he needed to see the words in Hansard before raising the issue. However, in this particular situation, the honourable member actually should have raised the issue on the day it happened, as he was raising an objection to a decision made by the chair. If the honourable member was unhappy with the decision of the chair, he should have challenged the decision of the Speaker at that time and not raised the issue on the following day. In addition, it is worth noting that although the decisions of the Speaker can be challenged, they are not to be debated, as this could be viewed by others as a reflection on the presiding officer. Beauchene citation 71(1) states that the Speaker should be protected against reflections on his or her actions. O'Brien and Bosk advise on page 615 that, in quotations, reflections must not be cast in debate on the conduct of the Speaker or other presiding officers, and only by means of substantive motion may the actions of the chair be challenged, criticized, or debated. End of quotations. The 24th edition of Erskine May states on page 61 that the actions of the Speaker cannot be criticized incidentally in debate or on any form of proceedings except for a substantive motion. These findings are supported by numerous rulings from Manitoba speakers, including Speakers Murray, Hanischuk, Walding, Phillips, Rocan, DeKay, and Hicks. I would therefore encourage members to exercise caution when raising issues that could be construed by others as reflecting on the chair. Rulings and decisions made by the Speaker can be appealed, but to raise them as matters of discussion in the House is not appropriate. If a member wishes to discuss a ruling or a decision made by the Speaker, my door is always open, and I would encourage members to have a private discussion with me in my office. On a final note, I can appreciate that this has been a long, challenging session for a variety of reasons, and at times members may have experienced feelings of frustration. As your presiding officer, I take seriously my role as the custodian of decorum. I try my best to allow a free flow of discussion and debate between members. However, when exchanges become too heated, it is my role to intervene and remind members about treating each other respectfully so that we may exhibit the decorum that Manitobans expect from their elected representatives. I see this as a partnership between the chair and all members, and I will continue to work to the best of my capabilities to ensure that we have a respectful environment in which to share our debates and to express our thoughts.